Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session on the Talent Intelligence Platform, AI, and what you need to know in an age of disruption. Our guest speaker today is Betsy Summers, Principal Analyst at Forrester. Betsy is a member of the Future of Work team at Forrester, where she advises leaders in employee experience, talent management, HR, and IT on talent strategy, business outcomes, and technology selection. My name is Michael Dunn. I'm a Senior Director of Product Marketing at Eightfold AI and will be your host today. I will join Betsy after her presentation to go over further questions. So please join me in welcoming Betsy Summers.
All right, thank you so much. We are going to talk today about talent intelligence platforms, AI, and what you need to know in an age of disruption. So, as Michael said, I work on the Future of Work team at Forrester. I cover human capital management, but we as a team look at some of these really big macro shifts in the workforce and what leaders and employers are having to do to really grapple with some of these major shifts. And this creates some great context, I think, for the conversation that we'll have around talent intelligence and why it has emerged and why it's so important right now. So first, we look at these four shocks. The first one is systemic risk, and of course, we all know about systemic risk from our experience with COVID. That's how it's really manifested in our minds right now. But there are many different systemic risks that leaders have to anticipate, including geopolitical changes, data integrity, supply chain issues, economic uncertainties, concentration of assets, and many others. And of course, anticipating and preparing for these risks helps to boost resiliency for an organization. The second is just the change brought on by robots and automation. We're in the age of automation and artificial intelligence, and we reap a lot of benefits from these increased efficiencies and helping us be more effective, offloading tasks to machines. But how well are our organizations really equipped to take advantage of these technologies and also to maintain and oversee them as well? By 2030, we predict that 80% of jobs will experience change because of automation, RPA, AI. And so it's really, really important that leaders look to this technology to see how can we really harness the benefits from it, and then how can we help our employees anticipate those changes. Number three is around employee data. There's a ton of employee data out there. We're swimming in it. And we're collecting more and more data about our employees, about our customers. And we have a lot of questions about how to manage it all. And many of these questions too circulate around how can we glean insights? How can we know what actions to take? What are the recommended actions from all of this data? What does the data mean itself? And for talent, of course, this is really, really central as well to the talent intelligence question. But this is really essential for all talent leaders to look at in terms of data analytics and intelligence and insights. How well are you really gleaning workforce and people and talent insights from your employee data? The fourth, and my favorite to talk about, is around employee power. And we'll definitely talk about this just in context, of course, of the so-called Great Resignation and the kind of talent panic that's resulting. But just overall, the level of fatigue and burnout that we've experienced throughout the pandemic, and also just the importance of employee experience, the growth of employee activism, the shifting of the balance of power in organizations, and the shifting in importance in terms of employee experience, really, really making a difference in terms of customer experience and overall organizational results. And so this is the backdrop and the context through which talent intelligence and talking about this new category becomes really, really important. Because, I mean, this is the elephant in the room. Everyone is talking about this right now. This is, I think the media has really gravitated towards the great resignation as a term for what's going on. I tend to see it more as a great reckoning, because I think during this time period, people have been thinking very, very hard about what work is worth it to them, in terms of how are you compensated, how flexible, how safe are you, how empowered are you at work to make the best decisions for yourself. And so both employees, both workers and employers, are having to go through a reckoning of a sense to figure out like what work is worth it to me, and then on the employer side, how to attract and retain these employees, and how to maybe re-engineer and reimagine some of the talent processes and talent strategies that they have in place. And that definitely has an impact on the types of tools and the technology that HR and people leaders are leveraging. And we are seeing, this is Forrester data. This is over 700 HR leaders saying that they plan to increase and invest more in HR tech in the next 12 months. So 41% of this say this. And we've seen overall during the pandemic the increase in spending in HR technology, especially as organizations are thinking about, oh, how do I enable managing people remotely, shifting people and redeploying people across business units? How do I help people collaborate? How do I maintain company culture and collaboration even in a remote environment? And so there has been, I think, a lot more focus on HR technology and how it can help ameliorate some of these concerns and help organizations really thrive in the face of all of this change and uncertainty. And we've seen this as well from the investment side too. There's just a ton of growth overall in HR technology. And we're seeing this across the board, from investments in platform to investments in AI-enabled technology for HR and for kind of and people strategy. Recruitment is definitely seeing a huge uplift in investment, learning as well. And so we have seen this focus on how can HR technology really enable some of these key pillars and key strategies of employee experience. Over the last 10, 12 years, we've seen a lot more of these categories emerge that focus on employee experience specifically, no longer just the top-down management of your workforce, but also helping to provide more empowered, supported, and more agency-enabled experiences for employees so they can take more control over their experiences at work. And we're seeing some of these categories, of course, a while ago, or 10, 12 years ago, candidate relationship management. We see, and that was kind of the emerging capability cluster, and then we saw it really evolve into its own category and its own piece of technology in its own right. And then learning experience platforms, continuous performance development as a counterpoint to the more traditional performance management, employee experience management platforms to help measure and glean insights from employee engagement and employee experience. And then we're also seeing this emergence of skills graphs and ontologies to provide a more AI-enabled way for organizations to understand the skills of their workforce. And that has kind of bubbled and expanded into what we're calling talent intelligence. And so with all of these new categories, analysts kind of, they take a stab at market definitions, which is great, and it's definitely expected as our client organizations need to really understand the markets, understand the boundaries, the capabilities, the benefits. And other analysts have tended to think about talent intelligence as just labor market data insight or just external data to largely inform hiring practices, where you can really identify talent pools and related compensation, how different skill sets are emerging and changing. But I tend to be a little bit more expansive, both of the applications of this data and just the kinds of data as well. And so I see it as data and insight about a potential or current worker that organizations can use to inform their talent attraction, development, mobility, retention, and workforce planning efforts. So it has, I think, a lot more threads to enterprise effectiveness than just talent acquisition. And then the talent acquisition or the talent intelligence platforms are tools for aggregating, analyzing, and then disseminating all of this data and insight across the enterprise ecosystem. So, to paint a picture of what this looks like, you see then a kind of, the inevitable stat graphic, of course, but talent intelligence. A few things to note on this slide. In the green talent intelligence box, we have the areas where these talent intelligence providers really focus. This is the current scope, and it's mostly on skills and job history, in some cases, past and current performance, which gives employers a huge amount of insight, and workers as well, which we'll definitely get into. And so then it aggregates and analyzes and disseminates this data across the enterprise ecosystem. So plugging into the systems of talent management and talent experience, then it can start to influence and inform all of these areas and make them all better. And in so doing, it plugs in and it just informs all of these strategies across the enterprise. Now, finally, and this is where I see the talent intelligence category evolving and growing as well, is that skills and job history will not be the only kind of currency of value with talent intelligence, but really we could imagine things like aptitude or preferences, personality, aspirations, and values coming into play, especially as these people become employees and the system starts to learn about how they engage with their coworkers, with their own work, with the tools that they have. And so the system, the talent intelligence platforms can be observing and responding to how people are engaging with all of their various attributes of work and all of their systems of work. And so I think that, and I anticipate this being really, really valuable for understanding where a person can either find the best fit for themselves in a particular job or in an organization, and where the organization can glean the most value from their work. Because it's more than just a skills conversation, it's also their own aspirations. Where do they want to lean into? Where do they want to grow and really invest in themselves? And so I want to also double click on some of the ways that talent intelligence can inform each of these talent pillars across all of these different kind of strategy areas that I included in that last graphic. So specific to talent acquisition, you have, of course, candidate matching based on skills, not just on keywords or job titles. You have talent pool identification, uncovering hidden talent, which is a huge benefit for organizations when they're looking at their potential candidates. And then next, with learning management and experience, you're illuminating skills landscape within the organization. So on a micro level, per person, but then also on a macro level of across all the organization, you can really start to inform your upskilling, reskilling strategies, because you're illuminating where the skills gaps are and where all the opportunities are for growth. And then, of course, you're improving the learning opportunity recommendations and the personalized learning recommendations that employees come to expect from modern systems today. Within performance management and development. We have personalized development strategies. We have more humanized goals. So those are really they could be created specifically based on the skills that you have and the skills that might get you to that next position that you've identified. And then also reducing bias and subjectivity in those reviews and appraisal process. These are all kind of potential applications for talent intelligence that I see. Next, around career management and mobility, this one is a no-brainer almost, because when you talk about candidate to work match in the talent acquisition context, of course, you should also be thinking about it from a talent mobility context as well. And so that you can bring more transparency into career pathing, that you're showing people their opportunities based on the skills that they have and the potential for learning new skills that are related. And then, of course, just accelerating talent mobility overall. And just improving the recommendations of talent mobility and career path for everyone, not just like the talented few at the top, right? That succession planning is typically based on, but really it's succession planning for everyone so that everyone sees a growth opportunity in the organization. And then next, with engagement management, you can better inform engagement drivers just knowing more about the people in your organization. You can personalize actions and recommendations at all levels, from the one-to-one, how can a manager help motivate or just talk to or have difficult conversations better with certain employees, but then also from an aggregated perspective overall, where are we having some tough spots with engagement? Where do we need to lean in and focus, maybe for huge teams or specific business units? That kind of intelligence can really, really be helpful on a micro level and also on a macro level. And so just providing additional context really, really helps and kind of infuses some of that analytics and insight with more and more data. Workforce management, this is an emerging area too with talent intelligence around just data-informed scheduling and rostering, making sure that the people that you have scheduled for work have the skills and also the kind of team cooperation and dynamics that you're looking for to make sure that you have the most productive and engaging environment for your hourly workers. And kind of on a micro level, that really, really matters. And so finally, with workforce analytics and planning from a macro level, we're looking at just better informed workforce plans. You can imagine the value of having capabilities and skills data, but also a lot of the maybe future mobility plans within your workforce plan. And so that all of those areas of the organization that are tasked with executing on workforce planning, like your learning, your recruiting, your procurement teams, your finance teams, all of them are just having much more data to act on, and you're bringing much more informed capabilities into your scenario planning and choosing your build, buy, borrow, or bot strategies from a much better informed place. And you're able to do more continuous monitoring because you have a dynamically updating intelligence repository about your workforce and about what skills they have, where they want to go, what their values are, etc. So it's starting to inform a lot around some of those macro changes that you might want to make in terms of your workforce planning and strategic workforce planning. And so because this is a new emerging category, of course, we're looking at some of these key capabilities, and they're starting to emerge, that some of these key attributes are really, really important for these technologies, these platforms to be successful. And right now we've identified 4 different attributes that are really adding to the success of these platforms and also making sure that they're adding value to organizations. The first one being dynamic. This has to be a system constantly learning, inferring, updating. It's basically reducing the need for manual input, and it's responsive to these events and actions that our workforce are taking. We can't just have something that employees have to go in every month, every quarter, and update. Number two, it has to be explainable. So, of course, if you have these talent intelligence platforms making recommendations on best fit candidates or personalized learning experiences, for example, or even career paths, it has to boost the confidence of its users by having results that are really easily understood by the humans using it. This reduces human bias, of course, and it helps just build confidence in the platform and the technology overall. The third is it must be extensible. So it has to have the capacity to extend and scale the platform's capabilities, of course, through integrations, customizations, etc. But it has to be scalable. This is something I think with talent intelligence, it has so many threads into key parts of the enterprise, both from a tech stack perspective, but also from a strategy and strategic perspective, that you really have to have an extensible solution. And then finally, with it must be open. So it has to allow multiple inputs of data to provide a more comprehensive, complete picture of your talent, and to also provide the potential for you to start adding more data into the platform. Because I think that while we are very focused right now on skills and labor market data as well, as I said before, I think there's a lot of other data that can be very, very valuable for organizations as they try to understand their workforce, like aspirations, values, personality, etc. And so I think making sure you have an open platform to not just ingest more skills data, of course, where the current focus is, but other kinds of data as well, to help better inform employers and employees about their own makeup and their own values, their own stance, their own aspirations, their own potential. I think those are critical. And what I've been hinting at, of course, throughout these attributes is the importance of AI. That the not so secret ingredient to making talent intelligence work is AI. And of course, AI, we've seen it bring a lot of value to HR organizations and just the enterprise in general. But specifically for HR, we've seen AI come up across the employee life cycle, that it really applies to every element of work and every element of the employee experience, driving both efficiency by routinizing or by automating some of those routines that employees do, but also effectiveness. Removing human bias, I think, is a huge benefit. I think, kind of case in point, the World Economic Forum in one of their toolkits around AI was talking about how if you were asked to rate and write down your top skills, you might only come up with 11. But if AI was asked to rate your top skills, it would generate a list as much as 34. And so there is some element of removing that human bias and human kind of limitation to, our limited perspective, that AI can really expand our view and expand what's possible for us, and then deliver these maybe career paths that we've never thought of. And so in those ways, just thinking about some of the benefits of AI, I think are really, really good to ponder when you think about talent intelligence. Because really, when you think about talent intelligence and the benefits that it can bring, it's really essential for all of these pieces, from reducing bias in hiring and skill development, ensuring best candidate to work match, removing the bias from that matching process and that hiring process, expanding and accelerating career paths, reinventing, calibrating different job descriptions, right? Being able to pull in multiple points of data from job descriptions and helping organizations really standardize and be more consistent, informing upskilling, reskilling strategies, closing the skills gap, creating a total talent vision and plan. So, even beyond just your full time employees, how can you bring in contingent employees and their skills into the conversations? And finally, I think it all adds up to increasing organizational agility and resilience. And we saw some examples of that, of course, during the pandemic, with organizations being able to redeploy staff across different business units because they had the talent intelligence already in their organization to be able to make those moves and to quickly pivot in terms of understanding where the people who have transferable skills across these areas of business that were in decline, and then others we really, really needed people. And so it brings a lot of benefits, I think, in terms of higher engagement, higher retention, by giving people more growth opportunities and more transparency into the skills that they have and the potential skills they could learn. And then also just quality of hire, lower attrition, lower time to productivity in terms of some of those talent acquisition metrics, less time to fill open roles, higher diversity as well, because if you're looking just at skills and not necessarily previous job titles, then you open up your talent pools extensively. And what's important to note here is that these talent intelligence benefits support both the organization and employee experience, and that we're seeing these benefits for organizational agility in terms of, talent pool identification and increased hiring in diverse populations and redeployment, workforce and org planning, etc. Also hand in hand with these very specific employee experience benefits in terms of career pathing that's comprehensive and transparent, upskilling and reskilling opportunities, better relationships with coworkers and managers, more flexibility and autonomy in terms of how they work, when they work, where they work. And there are many organizations who are taking advantage of talent intelligence, mostly now from a talent acquisition standpoint, and certainly from a maybe learning from an upskilling, reskilling perspective too. But I think the applications and the use cases will expand as the category itself expands and as these vendors add more and more capabilities to infuse their intelligence data into the rest of the enterprise ecosystem in regards to talent strategy. And so there's a huge potential here for growth, and I think a huge potential to help HR and people organizations re-engineer what they're doing, especially in light of the Great Reckoning, or increased quit rates, or whatever they're experiencing in their particular industry. But I think that all comes with a caveat, and not everything is kind of a rosy picture, because what we've seen is that while the majority of the organization sees the impact of AI as very beneficial, right? 74% say that AI has had a positive impact on their organization. We find that specific to HR, they don't have a high level of confidence. Only 19% of HR leaders are confident in their team's capabilities concerning AI, and you can see 31% around automation as well. So it's very low on that confidence list. The highest, maybe not surprisingly, is compliance. And then also less than a third of HR leaders plan to invest in skills development around AI and automation. That's kind of lowest on their list in terms of the skills that they want to bring into their teams. And without those capabilities internally to help manage and select these tools, that's going to put HR on the back foot in being able to take advantage of some of these newer capabilities. Because AI is really key to achieving all of these benefits at scale. These tools, these talent intelligence tools, must be dynamic, right? They're not static. They're not they're not like competency maps that we've used, right? That are kind of static documents that you have to manually change and map, typically using Excel. I've definitely been there. But we're looking at dynamic and assistive technology, reducing the need for manual input. So being able to learn and glean insights from all the information available about our candidates and employees, and also just responding to the actions that they take once they're inside the enterprise. It has to be intelligent and curious, just looking for all of these data inputs. And it has to be unlimited by the human bias that we have, especially when we think about ourselves and others, our skills, our proficiencies around skills. And all of this necessitates and requires AI. And so it's a really, really big component. I don't think you can have a talent intelligence tool without AI on the back end, and driving everything about it, because of the need for huge amounts of data and huge amounts of learning that the machines have to do, and the artificial intelligence has to do to produce these insights that are helpful. And so I really see that talent intelligence is the key to the future of work. I think that this new category of tools, vendors, technology is really, really exciting. And we're only at the beginning of where talent intelligence can take us, and where the potential is for just helping both employers understand their workforce better, and then also for employees to take more control around their career pathing and their own opportunities. And so I really do think it is the key to the future of work. And so with that, I will wrap up and look forward to our conversation and questions.
Great. Well, Betsy, thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. A lot of great information. I think everyone, the viewers, are going to really learn a lot. Did bring to mind a number of questions that wanted to drill down on. Actually, I think we've had previous conversations on this. You mentioned on the topic about learning, how often it's very tactical. It might be immediate need, because or you just workers would have to learn for some reason by diktat. How do you see the talent intelligence platform providing an environment that would improve or help foster a culture of learnability?
Great question. So you're totally right that typically in organizations, learning really happens, usually from a compliance need, or a kind of top down, this is required learning, that you must take. And so we did see a trend maybe 5 to 10 years ago of organizations taking more advantage of some of the learning experience capabilities, being able to bring the culture of learning in terms of, what do I want to learn, what am I interested in, and allowing people to take advantage of content that was either inside their organization or outside their organization, but with more of a culture around just learning for learning's sake. But that's not enough, because we know that people don't learn for learning's sake. They typically want to learn in connection to a goal of either mobility or career growth, or even just improving their current performance in a role, in a job. And so it really, I think talent intelligence brings the lens of here's where your current skill set is now. Here are all of your potential career paths. And it allows the employee to pick their own adventure, choose their own adventure, and identify where they want to spend their potential, basically, right? We all have unlimited potential. It's just based on what our current skill set is. And then also, can the talent intelligence platform help route us in the right direction in terms of here's where you actually have more potential to make an impact either for the organization, for yourself, based on your current skill set. What could you learn more easily, right? If I already know 2 languages, chances are I could probably become proficient in 5 languages, more so than someone who is only proficient in one, their native language. And so I think talent intelligence platforms could really change the way we learn, the why we learn, and also to your point, start to introduce this culture of potential, of aptitude, of learnability, right? That people might not be coming into our organization with 100% of the skill set they need, but because they have the 60% or the 70% that's most important, the talent intelligence platform could say, we have, X% of confidence that this person could learn 100% of these skills in 3 years' time, given these upskilling opportunities or something like that. So I do think that it allows for a ton of upskilling and reskilling in terms of like helping people really realize their potential in new ways.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a great point. And it's funny. I think you were mentioning how in the World Economic Forum that the difference between skills people might actually have versus what they would state on a resume, and then you just think of what made clear to you what you don't know that you do have, and then saying what's the next step beyond that. I think is pretty powerful.
Yeah. And it's because it's we have the aspiration, right? We have the desire to learn and grow, but we don't always know the best path, right? We sometimes are in our own way because of just our limited perspective on what we think is possible. And so for something else to just come in and give us a more objective view, I think can be really, really powerful, and just help open our eyes a little bit more to what is possible from both an impact and also a career growth perspective.
Hmm. Hmm. No, I think that's very interesting, and that comes actually to the next question in terms of how talent intelligence platform matures and how adoption take place. Would be you've mentioned this, but also just to drill further down or give a little more elaboration maybe on its impact, positive on diversity, equity, inclusion in terms of, I think, what would say, giving the kind of strong backing to efforts to say hiring from underrepresented minorities, gender equity, other types of form of equity that might be out there.
Totally. This is such an important topic. And I think a lot of organizations, while they might talk the talk, they're certainly not, walking the walk, in terms of really making a concerted effort to hire from more underrepresented populations and to provide them with more career growth opportunities and upskilling and reskilling paths. As we talked about, introducing a culture of learnability, and not and kind of releasing some of that very rigid and maybe traditional archaic views of this person must have this particular experience, they must have gone to this particular school with this amount of education, I want them to have these particular job roles. That's really just it's not essential, but we are kind of stuck in that mindset, especially if the technology that we're using capitulates to that and only allows for searching for candidates in those ways. But when we're able to look at skills, and when like atomizing work to the level of skills is one really important thing, but then also if the talent intelligence platforms can tell us that all of these skills that you're looking for are related to these key skills that they already have, and those are learnable. Then we can start connecting them to upskilling and reskilling programs within the company, and so you start to get a talent strategy that has really broken down the silos between talent acquisition, learning, mobility, and performance in a really, really powerful way. And it can really change the game for how recruiters can get great candidates in and expand their talent pools and think more broadly about the capabilities that they're bringing into the organization. And typically right now, I mean, recruiters are really limited by the scope of the tools that they use and the fact that these tools only search job titles and keywords, right? They're not looking at the particular skills people have or the potential skills that they could build over time.
Interesting. And then I'd say probably the other question that's a follow-on is the impact of the talent intelligence platform in terms of tapping or managing diverse talent pools and workforces where it is the contractor. So the contingent workforce, I know, especially in large enterprises, a contingent workforce program is an interesting animal, one where procurement has a seat at the table. What are your thoughts about, with your research here on talent intelligence, what kind of impact?
Yeah, so you bring up a really good point that is has been traditionally been the barrier to including contingent labor or contract labor or temporary labor into the conversation around employee experience and upskilling and reskilling. So certainly, I think because procurement does sometimes in many organizations just take that piece of the puzzle and own it. When HR and people managers don't feel like they own something, right, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. But talent intelligence platforms allows everyone to be part of the conversation, whether you're a full-time employee or a contingent worker, temporary worker, et cetera. And that's really, really critical when it comes especially to things like workforce planning, where you have to have a complete and comprehensive view of all of the capabilities that you're bringing into the organization, whether they be full-time or part-time, temporary, et cetera. I think organizations can really learn from even the professional services or the creatives industry that are already thinking about how to leverage contingent labor effectively and how they put together dynamic teams that are full of both full-time workers and freelancers. Not a lot of those tools, though, have talent intelligence built in. And so that is one of the potential areas where talent intelligence platforms can plug into even some of the resource management tools and help provide more insight into how do you create these best in class teams that might just be temporary. And so it increases the organizational agility, and there's huge potential there. I think for bringing procurement and HR and finance really into the conversation more broadly about both the strategic workforce planning and then also the operational workforce planning of, okay, well, then how do we build these teams every quarter or by project or something like that? And especially in the context of talent marketplaces, which is one of the use cases where talent intelligence really comes in to provide a lot of value for these organizations. You could definitely see the potential for these internal plus external talent marketplace capabilities, all powered by talent intelligence, which is of course powered by AI.
Great, great. That wonderful insights there. I actually think that's about it for the questions. I think want to thank you for an excellent presentation. Thank you for your time. I think the work and the insights and the research that you just shown demonstrates just really a great presentation. And also, I appreciate the drill down on some of those points there that I think are going to come up with a lot of the organizations, whether it is global 2000s, whether you're not global 2000s, whether you're a nonprofit organization, many of these issues are going to crop up. So I'd like to thank you very much for your time and thank you for this presentation today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Anytime. Love talking about this. And I'm really, really excited about the talent intelligence platforms, the category as a whole, and just the value that it can provide to all of the organizations and all employees around the world.
Thank you, everyone, for joining today's session on the Talent Intelligence Platform, AI, and what you need to know in an age of disruption. The recording of Betsy's presentation will be made available on Eightfold's website at eightfold.ai. Please feel free to go to eightfold.ai to learn more about how an AI-powered talent intelligence platform helps organizations become future ready. Have a nice day.